player, and you know I'm not a stayer. That's a dirty, dirty love.
I'm still in love with you, boy.
So girl, I try to understand that a man is just a man. That's a dirty, dirty love.
I'm still in love with you, boy.
That's the loving from the start, but you know we're at the part. That's the way I give my love.
I'm still in love. Yes, I'm still in love.
What a man gotta do, what a man gotta do. Girl, when I never had for promise and no bling bling for all a girl. When I just love it when me fling fling control a girl. And I make your head swirl, and I make your body twirl, and I make you wanna be my one and only baby girl. Night after night, me give you love to keep you warm. Girl, you never get this kind of loving from your bond. I know you want your cats, and me just can't perform.
I love you, baby.
I know you get the little loving on me
You
gone.
don't know how to love me.
I know no time for no kissing and
Not
chow.
even how to kiss me.
I do me take a little advice
I
down.
don't know why.
Baby girl, baby girl, baby girl, baby girl.
I love you, baby.
I dirty, dirty, dirty love.
I'm still in love with you.
So I know you guys remember this classic 2002 from the Dirty Rock album.
Dirty, dirty love.
Sean Paul, Sasha, I'm Still in Love with You. And sitting to my right, the man who produced this record and was basically responsible for Sean Paul Atlantic Records collection, Murry Elias, welcome.
Greetings. It's been a long time coming.
Long time coming, but here we are.
Here, finally. Good to see you.
Yes, good to see you, Murry. Yeah. Thanks for passing through.
Hey, been looking forward to it, so nice and easy.
Nice and easy. Easy does it. So before we get into your work with the Sean Pauls and your various works in the music industry, let's dig into your background a little bit. Tell us about your interest in music, how it began, and how you got started on your musical journey.
It's a long story, and it's going to eat up your whole show, so let me see if I could figure out a short version. I was always a music-oriented person. As a kid, I had a record collection that kept growing and growing and growing. Like most kids my age and then who grew up in the 1960s. I was born in the 50s, but I grew up in the 60s.
Right.
The Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Motown, Atlantic, Aretha, just exposed to all kinds of music. Grew up with a circle of friends that were also very musical. By the time I went to college, I jumped into college radio and became music director and then program director at my college radio station up in Binghamton, New York.
Binghamton, okay.
Yeah, WHRW, that had a very long-running reggae program for decades, but I was the person who did the first reggae program in 1973, 74. I was a film major. Quick story, I was a film major. I gave my cinema teacher, my film professor, a show. And one week he came in to do the show, and he said, we're going to do a show about a movie I just saw in New York over the weekend when I was down in the city over the weekend. And he handed me an album. He says, I'll talk about the movie, I'll cue you, and you play the music. The album he handed me was The Harder They Come.
Ah,
okay.
okay.
Before I ever heard of reggae music, before I ever heard of Bob Marley, I was handed The Harder They Come.
The Harder They Come.
And he cues me to start the record. I dropped the needle on the first track, which was You Could Get It If You Really Want. And then it goes into the other songs, and I'm like, what is this? I've never heard stuff like this before.
So you never heard reggae music prior to that?
Well, I heard Jamaican records, but never knew they were, like most Americans, the Israelites, Desmond Decker was a top 40 hit.
Yeah.
I heard it, but I did not connect the dots to Jamaica back in the 60s.
Okay.
Millie Small, My Boy Lollipop, another weird sounding record for that didn't sound like anything else.
Yeah.
But I did not connect the dots. I was only 10 years old when My Boy Lollipop came out. Okay. So the first time I connected the dots to a style of music called reggae back to Jamaica, and The Harder They Come was that moment at my college radio station with my film professor who was excited about the movie The Harder They Come.
Yeah.
The next thing I did is next time I went back home to visit my parents in Long Island, went into the city, so the harder they come. Okay, and that was the life-changing experience. That was the gateway drug for me. You know, that was like, okay, I got to know more about this.
Okay.
Went back to school, called Island Records. I said, I'm the music director, program director, whatever, at the radio station here. I guess the harder they come, I need you to send me a copy of the album, any other reggae albums you have.
Okay.
They said, hold on. They put me through. They said, hold on 1 second. They put me through to somebody. Hello, this is Lista. You know, how can I help you? And we became lifelong friends to this day. Lister and I are still friends. He was the reggae guy at Island Records in the 1970s and 80s.
Okay.
All right. He was probably more responsible for turning more American kids like me onto reggae music than anybody else.
Okay.
Okay, when you called Island Records, you got Lister, and Lister got you the records. Okay, and then Lister introduced me to people that are still people I know today, artists that I interviewed back in the day, like, you know, Black Uhuru and Toots and all these artists who I interviewed back in the Dennis Brown, you know, people who I would have never met. He sent me a care package of those first Island reggae releases, which was The Harder They Come, the first 2 Bob Marley albums, or the Wailers albums, rather. The Heptones, Toots and the Maytals.
Yeah.
This is reggae music compilations. Okay, and that package arrived, and I spent the next week or two, you know, smoking ganja and listening to reggae, and just kind of like on this journey of discovery of reggae music that I've been on ever since. And a couple of weeks later, I decided, all right, I have about 10 reggae albums. I'm going to do a reggae show, like a special, not a regular show.
Okay.
Just like and that was the first reggae program at the station. Like I said, it was late 73, early 74. Okay. And then somebody called up while I was doing the show and said, hey, I love that you're playing reggae. I actually have 45s from Jamaica. Can I come up and, you know, play them on your show? And I said, hell yeah, you know. And we came up later that week and brought me a whole pile of Jamaican 45. He was a white guy, okay, who just happened to go to Jamaica on vacation and lived in the Bronx, 2 blocks from Brad's Record Den. Okay, so he was shopping, and the first Jamaican 45 I ever played in my life was Big Youth and Cal Malcolm, Naughty No Jester.
Naughty No Jester, yes.
The very first Jamaican 45 I ever played, and I was hooked. Then, next trip back to New York, he took me to Brad's Record Den for the first time on a Friday night. Brad's Record Den in 1974.
Okay.
Okay, which was a mind-blowing, eye-opening experience. And I walked out of there with a couple of $100 worth of 45s. You know,
that's a lot of music in 1970.
Right,
How much was a
exactly.
45 back then? Maybe 50 cents?
No. Well, probably about $2.
Yeah,
probably about $2, something like that. When I first started buying 45s in the 1960s, they were 77 cents.
Okay.
So yeah, this is 74. I would say probably about $1.50, $2 at the most. But also remember they're coming in from Jamaica, so it cost a little more.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's how I kind of started my reggae journey, and then started to do a weekly show once I started to build a real reggae record collection. And eventually, when I graduated, moved to New York City, and Lister hooked me up to WNYU, New York University's college station. And he said, listen, they need a reggae show. Do you want to do it? And from about 1978 till about 81 or so, I did a show on Thursday nights, reggae show for about 3 years. And then I started to kind of gravitate to being a club DJ in New York. Not a reggae DJ, but a club DJ in all the mainstream Manhattan big clubs like the Ritz, Peppermint Lounge, Limelight, the Tunnel, Mars, Continental. I mean, I also played in places like the Reggae Lounge and spots like that, Isaiah's. But I was more playing mainstream clubs. But I always played a lot of reggae. I was starting to figure out what kind of reggae could work in these big clubs. I mean, I played in clubs with 1,000 people, 2,000 people. They would be mega clubs.
Right.
And I started to just kind of develop an ear for the kind of reggae and then later dance hall that would work in a big club environment. And a lot of my fellow DJs started to come to me and say, hey, what was that record you played? Could you get me a copy? And next time I went out to Brooklyn to buy records again, I come back with a couple of more copies of that record. And here, flipping out to my friends, And some of these records actually started to find legs. When I was working at Island, one of the people that I worked at Island from about 1978 to 81 also, side by side with Lister, and he introduced me to Sly and Robbie, right in their taxi period, right in the early taxi days.
Right, yes.
And I used to work for what was called record pools. I don't know if you're old enough to know what record pools are.
No.
Okay. Record pools were kind of organizations that record companies would ship club records to club DJs. But instead of sending 100 records to 100 DJs individually, the record pools were an organization where 100 DJs would collectively get their records. So the record company would ship 100 records to the record pool.
Okay.
And then each DJ would get their records, and you'd report back to your pool what your top 10 records were, and then the pool would report back to the record companies.
Okay.
So that's how club DJs back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, before digital stuff happened, used to get their records. Because you actually have physical records.
Right.
You have vinyl.
Right.
All right. I was a member of a record pool, and I told Sly, I was talking to him one day about how I think certain reggae records can work. And I think the first record that I asked him to service one of my record pools with was Baltimore. Okay. And I said, I think this record could work, and he sent me 50 copies. We had 100 members, but I said 100 members aren't going to play reggae. But I think 50 of my members will play reggae. And I started servicing club DJs with it. And one thing led to another, and one thing led to another. And then I was working at a hip-hop label called Sleeping Bag, which may be a little not on people's radar, but it was one of the most important seminal hip-hop and dance music labels that launched the careers of artists like Mantronics, Just Ice. They were the first ones to sign KRS-One and when it was BDP.
Yes.
Before what was his name, who was killed, KRS's partner. They signed the first ones to put out KRS-One records, Just Ice records, Mantronics, Joyce Sims, All in All. They signed the first ones to sign EPMD and Nice and Smooth. So they were a real force in hip hop and club and dance music. And I convinced Sleeping Bag, I was working there doing marketing and promotion, and I convinced them to put out a dance hall album. They said, but we're not going to call this reggae. We're going to call it dance hall. All right, which is not a term I made up, but I wanted to use as a marketing term because reggae wasn't happening in the clubs. I worked at Island Records when Bob Marley was alive.
Yeah.
They couldn't get Bob Marley on the radio if their life depended on it. Okay, and that's a fact that a lot of people are too young to understand.
Yes.
Okay, but reggae music was not black American music for years.
Right.
Okay, the doors were shut. I mean, I worked at Island. I did not work on the Bob Marley project. I was just out of college. They weren't putting me on that level. But I was in the room with people who were working with Bob Marley. And used to hear comments about the radio promotion people that used to take Bob Marley records or Bob Marley himself to black radio in America. And they said, no, we don't play that kind of music. That's jungle music. Take that music back on the banana boat.
I've heard those terms.
Right. Take that music back on the banana boat where it came from. And the door was shut, to that. But I realized somewhere around 1985, 86, when I was working at Sleeping Bag, after Bob died, both Island Records, Chris Blackwell himself, and all of Jamaica were looking for the next Bob Marley.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And they were kind of looking, and I mean, there was Black Uhuru, who at that point were probably the dominant roots reggae artist after Bob.
Definitely.
Okay, with Michael Rose and the original lineup with Puma.
Right.
Not the original lineup, but the original Island lineup.
Right, with
Puma and Ducky. Right,
yeah.
which was, to me, that was the essential Black Uhuru
Yes,
period.
yes.
And Sly and Robbie.
Absolutely.
Okay, and their shows at the Ritz were phenomenal. But everyone's looking for like Black Uhuru or this one or that one, Gregory, Dennis, somebody to take the baton from Bob.
Yes.
Okay. And really, on the international level, the person who really became the international Jamaican superstar wasn't a reggae artist. It was a dancehall artist. It was Yellow Man.
Yellow Man.
It was Yellow Man. So with the rise of Yellow Man and what was the beginning of the modern dancehall era,
Yeah.
okay, and then the slang tang thing happened,
Yes.
and as a DJ, I just kind of heard, and that was also early for hip hop. Okay, 1985, 86 was really early hip hop days.
Yes. Yes.
I just kind of saw where hip hop and this new kind of sound out of Jamaica called dancehall were going to intersect in a way that Bob could never intersect with Black America.
Yeah.
Okay, it was going to happen for dancehall. And I was sort of one of the movers and shakers that saw where we were heading.
Yeah.
And asked and kind of got Sleeping Bag to put out a compilation, not calling it reggae, calling it dancehall, to differentiate. This is not your parents' reggae.
Yeah.
This is something new for you young kids. All right, and this is a different sound than Bob Marley and Dennis and Gregory and Burning Spear and
Right.
all the artists who I loved. Okay, loved, but was a departure, and that departure was going to make reggae popular with a Black American young audience.
Yes.
That was a hip hop audience,
Yeah.
different from an older Black R&B audience.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was the guy on the record company side that saw that writing coming on the wall. All right, and started to put out records on hip hop labels like dancehall records, marketed as dancehall, not reggae, marketed to a young urban hip hop audience. Okay. With a club DJ in mind. With club DJs in mind.
Okay.
Not radio DJs, club
Clubs.
DJs.
Okay.
Okay. And that was the path I started on in 1985. 5 or 6 years before Columbia or Epic signed Shaba and Supercat. 5 or 6 years before VP put out their first Strictly the Best, Volume 1 and 2. Sort of kind of creating the template for dancehall in America.
Yeah.
Okay, on the record label side. There were lots of other people doing lots of other things to push the train forward.
Yes.
There were people on the radio like David Levy
Yes.
and Sting International. And later on, Bobby Condors.
Yeah.
There were people on the production side like Sting International and in New York creating like that hybrid sound.
Yes,
that
yes.
also helped cross things over. I'm not sitting there. It was just me. Okay.
Right.
Okay. But on the label side,
Yeah.
it was just me for about 5 years. Before VP caught on, VP was in existence putting out records, but they didn't see that lane.
The concept.
Until I kind of created the concept. So that's the kind of, and I worked after that with Profile, where I signed Cutty Ranks, still a close friend of mine to this very day. Barrington Levy, kind of helped Barrington Levy have a whole new audience and
Yeah,
career.
because you kind of revived the Broader Than Broadway about 5 years after the initial release.
And introduced it to a whole new
audience
that gave...
Because the Profile edition, that was my first time buying that record.
No way.
Because when it came out the first time, I wasn't buying records yet.
Okay.
I knew of
How
it.
old were you at that time?
When it first came out, I was 10.
Okay, yes, okay.
But when it came out on Profile, I was 15.
Okay.
So I was buying records.
You reached that record buying age where you had enough allowance money.
Right, there you go.
Okay. So it was, for Barrington, an introduction to a whole new audience in America that never had.
Yeah.
Okay. Cutty Ranks became a hip hop icon. Okay. I consider Cutty Ranks to be one of the greatest DJs of all time and one of the most underrated. Okay. Cutty has 3 songs that hip hop heads in the 90s was stand up and salute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, Shabba had his songs, Supercat had his songs, but Cutty had anthems. You know, Stopper was an anthem.
Absolutely.
Limb by Limb was an anthem.
No doubt.
And 6 Million Ways to Die
Yeah.
was, without a doubt, the anthem of anthem.
Yeah.
And that kind of, it's always been an honor to work with. It was an honor to work with Barrington, We had a profile, the very first dancehall record to ever cross over on urban radio, first in New York and then all up and down the East Coast. It was the record that broke the glass ceiling for dancehall.
And that would be Life Is What You Make It?
Friday and Colonel Mike.
Yes.
Exactly. That was the first record to break on urban America. First on Kiss FM with David Levy. Hell up David Levy, okay? And Sting. They started playing it on their show on Kiss FM. And the program director heard it and went to the clubs that they used to work at, the Underground. And saw the reaction and added it. And then Profile took that and spread it out up and down the East Coast. From Miami up to Boston.
Yeah.
And it was the first breakthrough record. At the same time, besides Cutty and Barrington and Friday, I was putting out these compilations. Put out so many compilations, I get them all confused. Dancehall Style E.
Dancehall Style E, yes.
Volume 1 and 2 and 3.
Yes.
I'm Profile. And the first one came out, or the second one came out, rather, Volume 2 came out just as the invention of SoundScan hit.
Okay.
Okay. And for the first time, you could, if you were, say, a record executive at a major label like Columbia, and you're saying, hey, I know kids are talking about this dancehall stuff, but does it really sell? Does it really get on the radio? We don't want to mess with this. This is not really selling yet. This is not really on the radio. We're not going to invest in this stupid thing called dancehall. Okay. And the things that turned things around were those two events. The first was Friday and Colonel Mike getting on the radio. Okay. And not just in New York, but up and down the East Coast.
The East Coast.
That's what made the major labels pay attention. The second thing that made the major labels pay attention is when SoundScan came out. Suddenly, Dancehall Style E is showing up doing 250, 300,000 copies and is verified through SoundScan.
We did that well, huh?
All right, and we did that well, and now the major labels are going, oh, that's what this stuff really sells. And that's when they jumped in. Okay. Because they had verifiable data.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Wow. Real
so
radio
they won't
play.
take the risk otherwise.
No, they don't take the risk otherwise until they see like there's something happening on radio or something happening with sales. And sales of indie label records, not just reggae records, but hip hop records, were hard to verify because a lot of these labels were hustlers.
Yeah.
And they're not out there advertising their sales unless it goes gold or platinum. Then you kind of have to let people know what you're doing. But short of that, they're not telling anybody, including their artists, what their sales are.
Right.
So, because they don't want to...
you pay them out.
They don't want to pay the money. Exactly.
Yeah.
So those two things happening pretty much back to back is what got the major labels to sign Shabba and Supercat and Cabra and Patra and whoever
when
else.
that real renaissance started.
That first wave of dancehall. The first golden age of dancehall explosions.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then the second wave was in the 2000s.
Yes.
And so after that, I worked at Tommy Boy. I did Big Blunts at Tommy Boy.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I did Priority Records, where I signed Cutty Ranks again, and did a couple of compilations. And probably the thing I'm most proud about at my time at Priority is the Beenie Man, Barrington Levy Murderer record.
Yeah, the remix.
The remix, okay, which was a record that I conceived of. That I said, all right, we signed Cutty Ranks. We're going to put, I work with Barry, basically the same team I worked at Profile. Okay, I'm bringing the old band back together again. Barrington Levy, Cutty Ranks, who had dancehall rock.
Yes.
Back in the Profile days.
Yes.
Now I want to do another record, and I thought Murderer would be a great record for Cutty Ranks. So I called Dave Kelly, and I say, Dave, this is the concept. I want Cutty Ranks, Barrington Levy, Murderer chorus, Cutty Ranks, DJing the verses.
Yeah.
Okay, and whatever. But I don't want a hip hop remix. I want you to update the reggae rhythm, but I don't want hip hop. I want you to kind of keep the rhythm, but kind of flip it a little.
Yeah.
And he took it. He took those marching orders and did a brilliant execution.
He did.
Okay, and I still have the demo to this day, both on cassette and on my computer. Okay, where Dave is rapping, where Dave is DJ, because he wrote the lyrics.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and for some reason, I'm waiting for them to go in and voice with Cutty, and they could never get it done. And it turned out there was problems with Cutty and Dave working together.
Oh,
okay. Which I didn't see coming, but then it came.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hold that thought right
Okay.
there. The station break is coming up on us, and we're going to continue our conversation with Murry Elias following the station break right here at Reggae Global Radio. And we'll pick up where we left off.
Them no wanna bees, them a go tweet too much dog and catch fleas. Them no wanna honey, them only want the money. That's how me know so them boy they all a move funny. Look like them lost, living in the past. One thing me have to tell them sorrow mom. Them better move fast before we get cross. But man no cater for them just because me got so then. Well I don't really care what people say. I don't really watch what them